Summertime Rendering's Hishigata Shidehiko has got to be the most evil villain in anime history. I'm sure that seems odd, like who would expect me or anyone to say that, but there's a reason, a whole story that's got me convinced Shidehiko is as bad as anime villains get. But before you can understand why I think Shidehiko is the worst of the worst, you first have to understand the dichotomy of anime villains. When you say anime villain, who comes to mind for most people? It's probably Frieza from Dragon Ball Z. Now, I've seen countless essays talking about why Frieza is so evil, and of course he is. He's destroyed a bunch of planets. What's more evil than that? But beyond that, Frieza doesn't exude the aura of true evil, does he? Well, anime depicts evil in a number of ways. There are actually categories of evil character archetypes that we can match to any villain that comes to mind. The first category is cartoony villains. These villains have to be a jack of all trades in that they need to be appealing to both adults and kids. So they tend to do terrible things like destroying a whole planet, but their personalities are usually far from the terrible things they do. In reality, a person who can destroy a whole planet will likely have a pretty depraved personality. Now, depraved personalities just won't do for an anime targeted to kids. So what's the solution? Well, you gotta make them cartoony. Frieza kinda has the voice of an old witch from a cartoon, and he looks, again, cartoonishly evil, and his demeanor is noble. The way he moves and speaks, his general way of being, he's polished. So when you juxtapose his outward persona to his evil acts of planetary mass destruction, it's a mismatch, and that's what makes him cartoony, or in other words, an unbelievable representation of evil. Not to say Frieza is a bad villain, he's amazing. Perhaps even my favorite character in Dragon Ball, but what he's not is evil in its truest form. The second category of evil characters are those that are split between cartoon and reality. Now, like I said before, the word cartoon in this context simply means the unreal. And so there are anime villains that are split between the real and the unreal. Villains like Dio Brando from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Dio is one of the greatest anime villains of all time, and what gives him that edge is the fact that he's evil in a way we recognize in the real world. Yes, he's over the top with the classic JoJo poses and his crazy hair and all that, but he's also a character with real hate and disgust imbued within him. Dio hated his dad so much that he poisoned him to death, and then he tried to do the same thing to his adoptive father, and then he kills his adoptive brother, and with his vampiric powers steals his body. These are gruesome acts of evil, and that goes beyond what a character like Frieza would do. Remember, Frieza's extent of evil can't be disgusting, because then that would make him too much for a younger audience. Frieza destroying a whole planet sounds bad, but it spares us the details. It's the difference between having the choice of killing someone with a gun or doing it with a hammer. They both lead to the same result, but one of them is a grisly way to go. Dio Brando is the hammer user in this analogy, but like I said, Dio Brando is half real, half unreal. And that brings us to the third category of evil anime characters. This category has the most evil villains in anime history, and that's because these characters are modeled after the evil we know and hate in the real world. Characters like Johann Lieber, Griffith, Shishio Makoto, and Summertime Rendering's Hishigata Shidehiko fit into this category. These characters do things not even Dio would do, and on top of that, there's no element of unreal in them. They're not gonna strike a pose and say some silly thing. No, they'll speak, move, and act like real people do, and then they'll do something unspeakably evil. Monsters Johann Lieber convinced kids to do things I can't even say on this video. Griffith killed all his friends and defiled his closest friend's girlfriend. Shishio Makoto killed everyone in the village just so he could keep their hot spring to himself. These are the worst villains in anime, but even among them, I think Summertime Rendering's Hishigata Shidehiko is especially wicked. Summertime Render is about this island infested with shape-shifting shadow monsters that want to replace people by eating them and becoming them. These shadows come from Hiriko, a god. After 300 years of this god feeding on the people on this island in secret, she's weakening. But she plans to restore herself by consuming everyone all at once at this festival when they all gather together. The protagonist, Shinpei, is the only one who can stop Hiriko's festival. This island is where he grew up. Everyone on it is precious to him, but he left shortly after his parents died to become a cook so he could support himself. 2 years later, he's heading back for the funeral of his childhood friend Ushio. While on his way back, he has this weird dream with her in it, where she gives him a mysterious gift and asks him to protect her little sister. Shinpei naturally thinks it's just a weird dream he had and moves on. So he arrives on the island, attends the funeral, and a day later, he runs into a shadow and dies. But then he finds himself back on the boat he came in, heading to the island like nothing happened. He traveled back in time. This is the gift Ushio gave him in that dream somehow. Whenever he dies, he goes back in time. And he does die again by getting himself caught by the same shadow that got him the first time. But on his third run of this timeline, he lives to see Hiriko's festival, and he predictably doesn't survive that either. When he goes back in time after that, he understands that he only has a few days before everyone on the island dies. And he also understands that this gift of his isn't limitless. He can only live, die, repeat a few more times before reality is set in stone. So he gathers a team that's capable of helping him. His childhood friends who he knows he can trust. With his help, they can beat Hiriko, but something terrible stands in their way. A powerful monster known as the Four-Armed Shadow that's always by Hiriko's side. This monster is Hishigata Shidehiko, and his backstory is the whole reason I made this video. When Hiriko arrived on the island 300 years ago, she ate this little girl called Haine and became her. Then somehow this guy called Hishigata Shidehiko, aka the Four-Armed Shadow, had relations with her and she got pregnant. That on its own is so messed up, but it gets worse. When this baby they had grew up, Shidehiko noticed that it looked just like him, so he got this absolutely disturbing idea to have his conscious copied and pasted onto the kid. Hiriko is God, she can do that, and they go ahead and do it. And Shidehiko, this sick man, he keeps having babies with Hiriko for 300 years, copying and pasting himself onto every one of them. His big plan is to live long enough to see the end of mankind, but Hiriko is weakening, and that means he can't keep replicating himself anymore. After his current lifespan, he'll die. And he's broken about it. So broken that he plots to steal Hiriko's eyes, which give her her godly abilities, and with those eyes, he plans to destroy the whole world along with him, because nobody gets to live if he doesn't. As messed up a character as Shidehiko is, what I found remarkable about him is that, unlike Frieza and Dio, all his outward features are a perfect match to the kind of person he is. The Four-Armed Shadow, for instance, is a visual representation of his personality. I mean, the Four-Armed Shadow looks demonic. It looks like something that came out of the darkest pit, and Shidehiko's personality is that darkest pit. And not just that, even the look on his face and the sound of his voice, every bit of him works towards painting this picture of his vile nature. Funny thing is, he's ironically the best character in the show. To be frank, the characters in Summertime Rendering aren't that great, especially this cop. I don't even know why he's on the show. But this villain, this disgusting character, he's the best of them, and simultaneously, the worst anime villain that's ever been. A lot of you watch my videos so you can get some anime recommendations, so I try to give you guys a few anime to watch at the end of all my videos. So if you want to watch some anime with terrible villains like Shidehiko, I'm gonna start by recommending Kimi no Zume. It's got one of the worst villains I've ever seen. Serial Experiments Lane has a really unique villain, I'm sure you're gonna love him. Now and Then Here and There has Hondo, who's this mad king, fantastic character. And finally, I think you're really going to enjoy Akunohana. The villain in it isn't who or what you'd expect, but it's a good time. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Bye.